Hey everyone, Mark Buzan once here again. If those of you joining us, thank you very much for joining me here. I had a bit of a delay in the last little while in our live streams, hoping to get back to them now. For those of you just seeing me for the first time, or you might have been coming across this, my name again is Mark Buzan. I am the founder of the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors. I am a two-time national executive director and president of two national associations, the founder as well of our executive director association Management Services, father to a wonderful little 5-year-old as well. Today I'm working from home. Indicated one of the problems I've been out this last while is a little damage, unfortunately, to the knee, but I'm fast recovering and doing well for this. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's really interesting. And it's what I call the mismatch of expectations that happen between those who serve on the boards of non-for-profit organizations and as well as those people who are on the board, that are staff actually to these non-for-profit organizations. So today's subject is non-for-profit boards, myth versus reality. We're going to be talking, as far as I'm concerned, the 4 biggest myths and realities that come up. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is just a little bit of housekeeping here. If you're joining us here from one of the live stream we're broadcasting on Periscope, on the Facebook page for the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors, as well as on YouTube. If you're on with us with Facebook or with Periscope, please, by all means, heart this, like this, get the word out. Facebook in particular, I'm told, they like the hearts. They don't like the likes so much. You'd be helping a cause of the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors so much if you could do that. So if you have any other kind of questions as well, in the comments as well, there is a link. You can join with me and interact as well in the chat via Zoom. We're trying a new platform here, Zoom, to get the word out to the 3 networks as described. So with that, if you're interested in hearing about this subject, let me know, heart this subject, leave a little comments. If you're listening to us as well in this broadcast, this live stream, leave a little comment saying, live stream. If you're listening to this in the replay, see this, I'll leave it a replay. If you're interested in this, I'd happy to get you the notes as well for this for this broadcast. So without further ado, I'm going to get down to the first biggest challenge that often I come across in terms of the mismatch of expectations, if you will. And this is particularly what I hear from those in the charitable sector of what I call the grander scheme of the nonprofit family. They, of course, again, under the home umbrella, you see nonprofits. As far as I'm concerned, we're talking about charitable charities, foundations, associations, co-ops, and a variety of things. But from the sector of our cousins in the charitables world, this is a big challenge, and that is the whole aspect of fundraising. And what the role of board is when it comes to fundraising. Staff often expect their board to be able to fundraise. They expect often enough that they'll come to the board and either open up their checkbooks or open up their Rolodexes. The truth of the matter is, probably if you're listening to this as an executive director, you've seen it more often than not, that is not always the case, per se. This is myth number 1, a myth that really deals with this specific aspect of fundraising. Board members as volunteers are often willing to want to fundraise. Regardless of what you may be wanting or expecting, more often than not, they are not. And how can we blame them when more often than not, they're not trained to do this? When we're bringing people onto a board and they don't have the proper training, know-how, awareness, they've never brought this, they come to the role with a passion, they come to the role with heart to want to make a difference, okay? So if you're going to address this biggest challenge right from the back, there's a whole other aspect of one of the resources offered by the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors called 20 questions to vet, recruit, and retain great board members. So you need to be able to cut that off the pass and establish those requirements at the beginning. That would be the first thing. But once you've got somebody on a board, you also have to think about the training. You have to offer them the opportunity to learn what's involved in this. The aspect of that is very clear as well. As part of that training, it has to set the line between the distinction of what their role is versus staff. Very few people I encounter join a board because they have a desire to want to get into the weeds. They get involved because they feel that they've accomplished something in their career, their life, their professional life, and they want to be able to have the opportunity to give back. So you need to be able to determine that what exactly is that line between what the role of the staff is when it comes to fundraising and where you need to be putting them in. Now, staff, be very careful on this as well, because if you offer up roles, as far as I'm concerned, that are too menial, that are too much into the weeds, technically, first off, I think that's your job, not theirs. But secondly, you lose them on the passion for why they wanted to get involved. So many people want to give back, but they want to feel that they're contributing from the heart as well. You also have to think about the next thing, and that's the motivation of what it is. And this gets into the second biggest myth, if you will, with number 2. Board members come to a board because they're motivated to roll up their sleeve and get into the weeds and doing things. Wrong. More often than not, what I'm finding is that boards and organizations, nonprofits, where they fall short in this, is that they're so focused on the to-do, what's to do next, what's to do next, and what's to do next, is that they lose track of the motivation, of the passion for how this is going to advance things forward. They lose track in their agenda about talking about the grand, exciting issues of this. Sure, things need to be done, but if you lose track of the heart and the reason why people join, you'll also lose them in terms of their motivation and want it there. Too often in times we're focused on the to-do lists, on checking off the to-do lists, rather than the whys of why people are on the board themselves. So that's number 2, is automatically assuming that somebody is willing to join the board and because they really want to jump in on this. And this also hits a big problem in terms of your recruitment phase and retention of people on the board. When they realize that, oh my God, I'm getting on board for another make work project, if you will. The next issue that comes about very much is all in the following 2 myths, all come under another separate umbrella of what I call the issue of foresight. And why foresight is perhaps missed on this. Let me give you an example. Myth number 3. Often enough, people come to a board with it ingrained in their mind as business people, high-performing professionals, that businesses are more efficient than not-for-profit organizations. It's a myth. That's a myth. The two are two very different kettle of fish. Business leaders, as a result of this, because they're all focused about the profit and they have been moving their organization forward and progressing there, because they have this mindset that nonprofits don't operate on that same way of things, is that they come with the thinking that, well, nonprofits are not efficient, as well, and as a result, I don't really have to pay as much of attention as well. The next thing that's really comes with this is the 4th myth, is that non-for-profits are more ethical than for-profit organizations. And this is not necessarily the case. I would like to say that is, folks, but it's not necessarily the case. The issue here comes down to is one of a few things. Because nonprofits offer that heart aspect of things, because often enough It's about the personalities, the connections, and the personalities that they meet. Often enough, unfortunately, they confuse familiarity with competence. I don't want to ruffle feathers. I'm new to this board. I don't want to ask the wrong or the tough questions. And because of this assumption, as a result of this, there's a lot of nonprofits face an issue of not enough scrutiny, high-level management that is still very, very necessary in not-for-profit organizations. And I'll be frank from you folks, my own personal perspective, it's in a personal mission I have of a belief that high levels of management standards need to be applied into not-for-profit organizations if they're going to achieve the goals that we set out for them in their missions. If you want an example, one only needs to look in the media or Google numbers of examples of nonprofit fraud, issues where unfortunate situations where an executive director has absconded with the funds, or a bookkeeper or a treasurer puts in questionable practices. Unfortunately, this happens across the board, and I've seen it happen throughout my own career with very, very small not-for-profit organizations, very, very small non-charitable organizations, and I've seen it happen with very big organizations as well. So one of the things, for example, simply questionable bookkeeping practices, or I've been in organizations, for example, where staff signed off on their own checks, on their own paychecks. These kinds of things happen. It's really critical as a result of this that this myth of ethical supremacy that exists in not-for-profits needs to be quashed. So as a result of this, I found a really great article which kind of inspired me to do today's broadcast. It was done by Stanford's Center for Philanthropy. And I'm going to be challenging you, if you're listening to this as a board member, at your next board meeting, you need to be thinking about where is the impact and how can we measure as well the impact of what we're doing. The second thing is we need to be curious about the context as well. Benchmarking against competing options, okay? If your organization is offering different services, if your organization is a membership service, is a membership organization, how are other associations doing the same thing or parallel things? If you're a social services organization, how are parallel social services organizations, either in your region, your city, or maybe even other cities, doing comparatively? It's your role as a board member to be asking the tough questions, not to be a hard ass against staff or to be difficult with your other colleagues. That's not the reason of that. It's to politely, gently ask questions, to prod and ask the difficult questions so that you're constantly pushing the organization toward its mission and to a higher standard. The next thing that you need to be doing, of course, is to be curious about the money. And when I say curious about the money, I don't necessarily mean just the fact that you're, well, let's say, going through the financial statements on a line by line and saying, how much did we spend on pencils this month? No, come on now, no, ridiculous. What that means is you need to be asking, why does the money come in? When does it come in? How will this impact, how will these changes in our financial situations impact our ability to be able to deliver on the mission later down? What kind of revenues can we be expecting, or changes in revenues can we be expecting, and what impact as well will that have on our ability to be able to deliver? You know, folks, there's a lot that can be said in the financials. They tell a story, indeed. The final question that you need to be asked or concerned there is you need to be curious about people as a board member. You need to be asking the questions as well, the oversight, with respect to the staff, to making certain that they're treated fairly, in line, however, with the respect, I dare say, of the role that your executive director or chief executive officer has as it relates to many of these issues as well, respecting their role. You need to be asking as well how your stakeholders are impacted. Are they relating well? Are service levels up? Customer service is a big factor, I think, as well. And it kind of relates to this, that where there is perhaps some treading over between the private sector and the not-for-profit sector. And finally, you need to be asking very much about your fellow board members' experiences as well. Was this last board meeting a rewarding one? How could we do better? If you are focused as a board constantly on, were we progressing? Was this a positive meeting? Were we doing great things? Then by all means, throughout this, you're going to have a much more engaged board. You're going to have a board that is high level board members that are much more easily to retain as well. And you'll have others as well more interested in stepping up. Folks, that marks my end of the day. My marks, getting on my soapbox for today about the biggest issues of myths versus realities when it comes to board service. If you're interested in learning more about the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors and these very subjects and the resources that we have, go over to nonprofitboarddirectors.org. Leave a comment down below, either in the blog or on our blog or here in one of our social media platforms where you see us interacting as well. And thanks again, folks.